readings, so I tend to linger around the ever so beloved art subculture of the internet. But my own interest in history often draws me in its own direction. Being an artist, I'm particularly interested in fashion history and deem myself comfortably knowledgeable on the matter. But there are times when I return to the art community and reality in general after ages of broadening my knowledge on the long lost times and find myself baffled by the knowledge of the average individual on general history and, since art is a visual medium, fashion history alike. Now, I'm not saying everyone should be sharing my specific interests. On the contrary, this video partially is for those individuals who do not know where to start with the development of characters and stories in historical settings. I will disclaim as we get to my own personal opinion on the matters discussed, but I'd be happy to hear everyone else's points of view on what I address. So, why would you want to create a historical OC? Maybe you hold an appreciation for specific historical events and want to tell a story in that context. Maybe you simply don't enjoy writing in the modern times and enjoy having a certain structured time frame for your character's lifetime. Maybe you just have an artistic appreciation for the aesthetics of the era and want to emulate that. There is no wrong answer, and no matter what yours is, I hope to help you along the way and share some opinions. We first ran into the question of the ever so dreaded historical inaccuracy, which very often tends to manifest itself in the sense of the aesthetics. Historical inaccuracy can come out of one of two reasons: conscious modification or ignorance. What determines that reason is the amount of research you do. And believe me or not when I say that it shows. People often tend to dread doing research. It does tend to be intimidating. You're stuck within this time period and location, and now you need to put this idea you have into the context of the times. History can often seem restrictive in that matter, lacking the conventionalities and, human rights of today. So one does tend to get the urge to ignore research altogether in favor of the so-called artistic liberty. It's an intimidating matter, even I tend to dread at times, but that does not mean you have to throw all your ideas out of the window. Let's talk about the narrative elements affected by setting your story in historical times. I suppose that opens a whole other kind of worms, because I like to use historical fiction to address the past issues of society and how they correlate to today. This may sound harsh, but if your piece of historical fiction is so full of holes and the artistic liberty you ever so desperately want, in my humble opinion, I think it would be easier if you simply created your own fantasy world where you may set your own rules. That does bring up the moral question of changing the past structure of society to fit your whims, but what I will tell you is that even if in historical settings, people have always been similar to how they are today. And I will disclaim that it is not unrealistic and unreasonable to include people of various races, sexualities, and other diverse features in your historical stories. To say otherwise is factually incorrect, and I think you can tell some fantastic diverse stories that do not need to end in tragedy while also addressing the issues of the times. You don't have to agree with all of your character's views, but keep in mind that it's not unrealistic for a character to have more progressive views even in their time, especially if they are a minority. Now, onto the aesthetic aspects of creating a historical OC. First and foremost, I personally am absolutely and utterly not a fan of the notion that adhering to historically accurate designs is restrictive in that sense. History is home to some of the most bizarre, interesting, and utterly fun design material, and all you have to do to get those ideas is to do some research beneath the surface level knowledge a beginner in the matter may have. Even if you do want to have some fun and allow yourself artistic liberty, I still stand by the belief that you need to know what you are interpreting for it to have the right effect. So no doing it out of laziness. I myself am guilty of doing so in the past. So, how does one actually create a historical OC then? For the time being, all you need is a general idea, the setting, and the time period you're going for. As for the garments, it takes more than looking at several fashion plates to understand the fashion of an era. I'd argue that the undergarments are a telltale sign of a well-researched historical design, as it plays such a role in shaping the general silhouette. There is nothing more saddening to me than seeing a good period design, but the silhouette is one obviously achieved by the modern bra that did not exist for the majority of history. Don't look at corsets and other support garments as confining torture machines, but as garments playing the same role as the modern bra today, while you pay attention to the general silhouette they shape. Don't look at corsets and other support garments as confining torture machines, but as garments playing the same role as the modern bra today, while you pay attention to the general silhouette they shape. If your vaguely 19th century lady for one reason or another does not wear a corset, keep in mind that she would not have the modern bra silhouette, but merely sad and unsupported it is. The hair also tends to be an offender. Let me tell you, for the majority of history, a lady's hairstyle would not fall apart at the slightest disturbance, because they've made those resilient enough to last them days and even weeks. I don't want to get into overly specific pet peeves of mine, so I suppose I could boil this down to: don't just draw what you see. Look at the construction of the desired outcome and how the seemingly trivial elements play a part in how the final result looks. The same advice is essentially applicable to drawing on its own as a skill. I'll link some interesting videos of the matter in the description to spare you of all I want to talk about, but definitely check them out if you're interested. If you've by now been discouraged by the amount of research you'd need for creating a historical character, let me tell you why that could be an interesting and insightful experience. You can do so much with the attitude towards fashion at the time. Remember, different social classes have always existed, and not everyone will look straight off a fashion plate. People used to keep their clothes for a long time and mend them according to the desired silhouette. And it's not uncommon for many to be wearing slightly outdated clothes, especially of the lower class. There is so much character design potential, and it can be used to create great narratives. For example, my friend has a story taking place during World War I with two main characters. The first was born into a wealthy family that suddenly falls into poverty, so she has a few very nice dresses that slowly go out of fashion as time progresses. The second is a lower class lady who works in the textile industry, so she has more variety of clothing that keeps up with the times, but it is not as expensive and lavish. I'll link my friend's social media in the description so you can check out her stuff. I highly recommend it. So you can't quite work with the clothing in the context of modern times, because the general attitude towards fashion has changed, and that's important to acknowledge. So, I suppose my opinion on the matter would boil down to: do your research. You need to know the rules to break them, and be mindful of the issues you're covering. If you by any means desire to do so, please tell me about your historical OCs. I'd be delighted to know about them. Also, let me know your opinion in response to mine. A lot of this is very opinion based, and I'm open to discussion. As for the drawing I'm doing, this has been an art trade with an artist whose Instagram I'll link in the description. They did an extraordinary job, and I had a delightful time drawing the character. You can also talk to me on my Instagram. I hope you stick around. I have a lot more planned for the future, and I hope this video has piqued your interest. Farewell for now, and I hope to see you again soon. But because I like to use historical fiction to address the past issues of society and how they correlate to today, no. And I will disclaim that it is not unrealistic and unreasonable to include people of various races, sexualities, and other And I will disclaim that it is not unrealistic and unreasonable to include people of various races, sexualities, and other diverse features in your historical and find myself baffled by the knowledge of the average. God damn it! Why are my sentences so long? God damn it!